Hey there, this is Anthony from mycodeteacher.com. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how to use UI page control and a scroll view to create a page control or a scroll view with paging enabled. So, um, as it turns out, uh, creating a paging view with the iPhone SDK is not what you might think it is, or it's not exactly what it seems at first. Um, you have this class called the UI page control, which has these little dots for each page, and you can switch through pages. But it actually turns out that the scroll view, an instance of UI scroll view, is what's responsible for actually the scrolling and the paging. So the page control really is just responsible for displaying what page you're currently on at a given time. So as a developer, what you have to do is you have to kind of coordinate these two so that they kind of communicate with each other, so that when a user swipes their finger in the scroll view alerts the page control and tells the page control to update to the next or previous page, and vice versa. So when a user touches the page control and switches to a next or previous page, the scroll view is updated and slides to the next or previous page accordingly. So um, it's not hard to accomplish. It's just you have to know how to do it. So let's get started right now. So create a new project. Of course, we'll create a window-based project. We'll call this page control. So first, let's create two outlets in the page control app delegate class. One to connect to the scroll view we're going to use, and one to connect to the page control object that we're going to use. So we'll save this, and now we can open main window.zip. And so let's go to the library, and we have a scroll view object here. Let's add this onto our default window. So we actually want to make this a bit smaller so we can fit the page control underneath. What we actually need to do first, or before that, is change the background color of the window to black so that the page control is actually visible, because the page control uses all white dots. So if we don't set the background color to black, you won't actually be able to see the page control. Okay, so now let's create that page control. So if we drag this, you can see that it's actually quite small. It's not an entire view in that it manages the pages. It's simply just this little control object that is for really display purposes, so the user knows what page they're on at a given time. Alright, so let's save this, and now what we're going to do here is we're going to just create three views, and there'll be instances of UI view, and each one will be the size of this scroll view, because when you create a paging style scroll view, you want the pages to be the size of the scroll view they're nested in, hence the use of the term page. So we'll have three views, each with a different background color, so there'll be really simple instances of UI view with just varying background colors, and they'll all be the size of this scroll view here, the same bounds, and then we're simply going to add them to the scroll view and then enable paging and then coordinate with the page control. Okay, so let's actually select the scroll view, and you see there's an option here in the scroll view attributes window, paging enabled, and so that actually takes care of a lot of the work for us. So what that basically does is but by default, a scroll view can just simply be scrolled, and it'll stop when you stop scrolling, except for when you actually exceed the bounds of the scroll view, in which case it bounces back to its bounds. But if you keep your finger within its bounds, you can scroll, and the scroll view will stop scrolling as soon as you stop scrolling. With paging enabled, however, the scroll view will actually snap to the page that it's closest to, or the page that is most visible on the screen. So very much like the home screen on an iPhone, where you have pages for your apps, whatever page, when you're sliding or scrolling through the pages of your apps, and as soon as you take your finger off the screen, the scroll view will snap to the page, the home screen page that's most visible, or is showing most of its view on the screen. And so that's what paging enabled does. So we check that, and then right off the bat we have a lot less work to do. So we don't actually have to do the snapping. It's done for us. Okay, so let's connect those outlets. So let's right click and drag from page control, connect the scroll view outlet, and let's again from the delegate connect the page control outlet to the page control object. And now let's get started on our code here. All right, so first thing we want to do here is we're going to define the number of pages. So page control number of pages equals 3. So we're going to have 3 pages, right? Then we want to set the content size of the scroll view. So when you create a scroll view object, it expects you to alert it beforehand how big the size of the entire contents it's responsible for scrolling through is going to be. So it expects that you're going to give it views that exceed its bounds. That is to say that it will have to actually eventually at some point scroll and clip to whatever is to be displayed on the screen at a given time, depending on where the user has scrolled to. But it wants to know how large that entire view is. So if this weren't to be clipped, if you had unlimited space to display all these views, how wide and how tall are all these views combined going to be? So you have a method here, set content size. Again, the added size or the cumulative size of everything it has to fit. So we use a function cg size make, which returns cg size struct, and then we give it a width and a height. So the total width that the entire content view is going to be the width of the scroll view times the amount of pages we have, right? So again, if we go back to Interface Builder, we said that each page is going to be the size of the scroll view. So if we have 3 pages, the total width of the entire content size is going to be this width from here to here, plus another one of those widths from here to here, plus another one. So three of the length of the width of this scroll view, one length for each page. So simply scroll view frame size width times page control number of pages, right? Okay, and then the height, of course, is going to be just simply the height of the scroll view, right? So the pages are never going to exceed. So there's not going to be any vertical scrolling. There will be horizontal scrolling. So the content size of the height of the content is never going to be taller than the scroll view itself. Okay, and then we need to set the delegate of the scroll view to self so that when a user scrolls, we are alerted and we can update the page control object appropriately. Then let's, this is default, but we'll, just so you can see what's going on here, we're going to set the current page of the page control object to 0. So page control objects, really like an array, like most of the things you deal with when you're programming, the index starts at 0. So the first page has index 0, and then it increases by 1 from there. And now we actually need to add some views to our scroll view. So we're going to create a method here. Create page with color. So the color is going to be the background color of the view for page int page. So for each page, we're going to call to this method one time, and we're going to create one page per call to this method. So a page is really just actually a UI view object. So I'm going to create this new page. So new view, we're going to call it UI view alloc init with frame cg rect make. Okay, so the x coordinate of this page is going to be the width of the scroll view times the page that we're on. So if we go to Interface Builder, so the first page, the x coordinate, the origin, where it's located in the content view of this entire scroll view is going to be 0, right? So the first page will start right here. The next page, however, is going to start right here at the end, right? So that'll be the scroll view times 1, because that's the index of the page, right? So we said that the index for page control starts at 0, so the first page is going to start at 0, that's the x-coordinate. The next page will be the width times 1, so that'll be here. The next page will be the width of the scroll view times 2, and that'll be another length of the width of the scroll view, and so on and so forth. So we simply need to take the width of the scroll view and multiply it by the page that we're on, the page that we're creating a view for. The height, or the y-coordinate, that is 0 for everyone. That's a constant, so we always want the y-coordinate of every page to be right at the top here, right? So we never want it to be any lower or any higher. We want it to sit right at this top, so it's always a constant 0. The width, of course, is simply the width of the scroll view. Each page's width is a constant, one length of the scroll view's width, and the same thing for the height. So the only thing that really changes here is where each page is, where it starts, the location or the x value at which each page is. And same thing for the height again, frame, size, height. Okay, so now we've created our view. Now we're going to set the background color to whatever's passed in when this method is called to. Now we're going to call to this method in the application did finish launching method. So for each page, we're going to actually call to this create page with color for page method right up here. And then we'll just give it whatever color we decide to use at the given time. So equals color, and then add this new page as a subview to the scroll view, and that the scroll view will add it to its content view, and then it will basically assume itself to be responsible for allowing scrolling to this next page. Alright, so now let's actually call to this method for each page. So self create page with color. So for this first one, we'll create a page with a red background for page 0. Then we need to create a page for the second page, or page at index 1. We want color blue color for page 1, and the same thing for the third page, which is index 2. And we'll use green color here for page 2. Alright, so let's see where we are at this point in time. Okay, so you can see that we've got our 3 pages here, right? And now if we slide right to the middle, or a little bit past the middle, and we let go, you can see that whichever page was more visible on the screen is snapped to as soon as we let go or stop scrolling, right? And that's the paging enabled option. If we, just so you can see again what that does, if we go back to the scroll view and uncheck paging enabled, or disable the paging enabled property, you can see that we can scroll to any point we want. So this is not a paged style scroll view. So wherever we let go is where it stops. So we of course we need that to be checked if we want to create a paged application. So now we need to do, if you notice that the page control object on the bottom doesn't actually update when another page is scrolled to in the scroll view. So we need to use the delegate method here. Scroll view did scroll. Scroll view sview. We use sview here instead of scroll view so that there's no contradiction between the IBOutlet or the instance variable scroll view and the local scroll view object in this method implementation. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to find out what page the user is on based on the x offset value of the scroll view when this method is called to, or when the scroll view is scrolled by the user. So this method is continuously called while the user is scrolling, and so we're going to find out what page the user is actually scrolled to with a little bit of math here. So first we're just going to get some information here. So we're going to create a CG float offset, and that's going to be the scroll view's x value offset, content offset x. So So this tells us where the user scrolled to. So if the user has scrolled 20 units in the x coordinate to the right, then you're going to see the blue start to appear right here, 20 pixels from the right of the screen here, and then mostly still going to be red. So as the user scrolls to the right here in this direction, the offset's going to get larger and larger. And as the user scrolls to the left, the offset's going to get closer and closer to 0 until they head into the negative values. So we're basically figuring out how much they've scrolled. And we need another float here. So this is just the constant size of each page. So which of course is just the width of the scroll view. Now we're going to figure out with some math what page the user is on. So floor, because we need to round. Of course, this math is not going to give us an integer. It's going to give us a float, and we need to round to whatever page they're on. So first, offset plus page size divided by 2 divided by page size. All right. Okay. So what we've done here is, first, if you forget this plus page size divided by 2 here, so the offset, we're figuring out where the user is, and then we're dividing that by the size of the page. So each page, if we look at the content here, we look at the size of the scroll view, you see here that the width of this scroll view is 320. So each page in the scroll view is 320 pixels wide. If the user is at 320, all the way at the right edge here, we know that they're on page 2. If the user is at 320 times 2, we know they're on page 3, and so on and so forth. So we're doing some math here to find out what page they're on, simply dividing how far they've scrolled by the size of each page, right? But the problem with this is, if we actually get rid of this, just so you can see what happens, we'll do that right now. Let's set page control, the current page. So we're doing this to update the page of the page control object. So let's build this and see what happens. So if we scroll, the page control object doesn't update until we've made it all the way to the next page. But we want it to update before then. We want it to update when the user has made it halfway, right? So right at this point. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to add half of the size of the page to this offset value here. So page size divided by 2. So we're going to add that. So now when we build, the page is actually updated as soon as you make it halfway. And of course that makes a lot more sense, since that's when the page will be snapped, as soon as it's halfway or more. Right? So the math it's not very complicated at all once you understand why we're using these numbers. All right, so now that's done. So now what we want to do is we need a method so that when the user actually touches the page control object, so you can touch this and it will go to the next page, we need to update. So we need to make an action here. Interface builder action, IV action, change page. And so let's right click and drag from the page control object to the application delegate and connect the change page action. And so you can see here that if we go to the page control connections events, when the value changed event occurs, it will fire and trigger a message call to the application delegate and tell it to execute the code in the change page method. So it's not when it's touched or when it's released or any of these events, only when the actual value changes. So when it switches value, so it starts at 0, if it switches to 1 or 2 or back to 1 or to 0, that's when it will tell the delegate that the page has changed. So let's implement that method right now. So it's actually not a very complicated method at all. So we need to create a rectangle, cgrect struct, for the new page that the scroll view should snap to or should display. Okay, so cgrect make page control current page times scroll view frame dot size dot width. Right. So what we're doing here is we're going to give this frame to the scroll view, and we're going to tell the scroll view where to scroll to. So we're taking the current page of the page control, so only when the page changes, or when this is tapped here, this page control object, will this method be executed. So when it's tapped, when the page changes, we're going to take the current page user is on, multiply it by the width of each page, and that will be the new x coordinate of where the scroll view should start at. So if the user is on page 0, page control.current page will return 0 because the current page index starts at 0, and then we'll multiply that by 320, which is this constant here, and that will return 0. So the scroll view will start its display at 0 of its content view, and that will be the first page. If we're on page 1, we're going to take 1 times 320, and then the scroll view will start at 320 pixels, which will be the second page, and so on and so forth. The height is always constant, or the y value is a constant 0, and then the width and the height are also constants here. That's never going to change because, again, this is a paged view. So we've created our new page rectangle to give to the scroll view to tell it where to scroll to, and then we're going to tell it to scroll to that. So scroll rect visible. We use a method here. We give it the rectangle that it should scroll to, and then animated yes. Save and build. So if we press this, you can see that the scroll view is updated when the page control is touched here. And so you can see there's actually a horizontal scroll bar, so let's just take that off really quickly. That's not very hard to do at all. We simply we click on the scroll view interface builder, go to the attributes inspector, and uncheck the horizontal scroller. Now let's save. We don't have to uncheck vertical scroller because no vertical scrolling is allowed, because the height of each page is exactly equal to the height of the scroll view, and so there the scroller is gone. And so our page control application is complete. So not very hard at all to do, just have to understand the process, and then it makes plenty of sense. So I'm Anthony from MyCodeTeacher.com. This wraps up this page control lesson for the iPhone SDK. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you tune into future lessons. Thank you for watching.